Now, I'm sure we've all heard of Bohemian Grove, but sometimes the research and the information isn't always out there. So I'll be diving into Bohemian Grove, the controversy, and the conspiracies behind it today. So, as many of you know, Bohemian Grove is actually a club. But before it was a club, it was an ideology. So the ideology was Bohemianism. And it was just kind of this unique way of saying that you weren't like everybody else, saying that you were unique. You were a little oddball, so to speak. Mark Twain described himself as being a bohemian. And really all that meant was that, you weren't greedy, you weren't gluttonous, you were kind of frugal with your spending and whatnot. And you were creative, and a lot of artists describe themselves as bohemians, and this would really go on until, of course, a couple of immigrants, as we all know, the United States is a country of immigrants, so a couple of immigrants came over to the United States, and they started the Bohemian Club Grove, and then they started opening up their doors to successful members, businessmen, politicians, whatnot, and what happened was the politicians and businessmen, obviously, because of their positions of power and where they could get the club, rose to the top of the club and obviously would rule the club. So obviously, more and more people came into the club, and then obviously they adopted Bohemian Grove, started to buy more land and whatnot, and it became what it is today. So what is it exactly today? So Bohemian Club, to be in the Grove, you have to be in the club, obviously, but a lot of members have been in the club, a lot of famous members in the club, a lot of presidents, and mind you, when I say presidents, these are presidents that are being inducted before they're presidents. In fact, there have been presidents in there that have got the old guard, per se, the old guard title, per se, which says you've been in the club for 40 years, so they have obviously been in there before. They've obviously been in there before they were elected president, not to mention CIA directors have been in there, a bunch of politicians, a bunch of famous businessmen, a bunch of elite people. Now, obviously, when you have a lot of people with power in a tight-knit space in one central location, per se, obviously a lot of stuff is going to go down. And actually, a motto of the Bohemian Grove is that they don't share anything from the outside world, so like no business deals, and leave everything that's going on outside outside. Now obviously this doesn't happen when you have most of these successful people in the world, so yeah, it's obviously not going to happen, and it's probably just used as a cover up to describe what's not happening in there, when actually the exact opposite is happening. So yeah, so they're doing this stuff, they're inviting these famous people into it, and all mind you, no women are allowed. That is a very strict rule that you will find if you do any research whatsoever. Never under any circumstances is there any women allowed. In fact, they got into a serious lawsuit because they didn't even want to hire women to work on the facilities through the club and whatnot, and through the Grove anyways. So they never wanted to hire women, and still to this day women are not allowed in the club themselves. Obviously you can't enforce that by law, but yes. Now, why would women not want to be inducted into the club? Why are women not inducted into the club? Well, most likely, the only really thing when women are excluded is really religious ordeals. In any sense of business endeavors, it doesn't even matter whether you're black, white, Asian, mixed, chick, or a dude. If you have the money, you have the money. So really, at the end of the day, the only reason why they wouldn't be inducting women into Bohemian Grove is if they were not in some type of religious affiliation. So, like this, religious affiliation, outdated. I'm sure we've all seen the Alex Jones footage. The Alex Jones footage revealed us to a practice in the Bohemian Grove called like the cremation celebration or whatever. I completely forgot what it called. The name isn't important. Pretty much, the Bohemian Grove, it's a 2-week the the actual grove, when the famous people come, it's for 2 weeks, and they basically do a camping trip. Richard Nixon, obviously because it's a bunch of men, said it was the most faggy, again, quoting Richard Nixon here, faggy 2 weeks of his life. And this makes sense. It's a bunch of men, most successful men in the world. They're going to be sucking up to each other to gain political status and whatnot. So again, he said it was the most faggy 2 weeks of his life. And it probably was. It was probably a bunch of dudes sucking up to each other to get in higher position standings. So with that being said, I was showing security camera footage. He snuck in with his cameraman. Enlightened us into some of the practices, in which one includes the cremation. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other practices, but this is the main one. It happens on the first day that the trainees arrive or whatever. And basically, what happens is there's hooded figures. Now, straight off the bat, the only real place, the only other clubs I know that have hooded figures was actually founded down here in Tennessee, and it starts with 3 Ks and ends with 3 Ks. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But so obviously you have hooded figures, which means you don't want people to see who you are, for obvious reasons. If you don't want someone to see who you are, you're probably doing a bad thing. You know what I have to say, rather or not. And then basically they take these effigies out in the boat, row them out into a lake, man-made lake, by the way. Row them out to this man-made lake, and then obviously light them on fire. Obviously, there's really no meaning behind this, except a crazy ritual to please the gods. Actually, the Wikipedia says that it was a sending off ritual, which probably how it started, but it probably advanced farther into that with the burning of effigies and stuff like that. But really, they're just crazy people. That's probably all there is to it. Crazy people. It's probably some kind of its own sort of religion. Probably not everybody there believes it, but they're in the club because there's people with power there and people with money there. So, in conclusion, what is Bohemian Grove? Bohemian Grove is a part of a Bohemian club. Correct? That is correct. So, if it's part of this Bohemian club, in Bohemian Grove, you have to be a member and whatnot. You get in there, bunch of famous people, bunch of people that will be famous in the future, because they're around money and power. That's just how it works. If you're around money and power, you most likely will get money and power. So, no, ma'am, obviously. So it's some sort of religious ceremony, some sort of religious club. It obviously has its own beliefs. Whether everybody there believes it or not, I highly doubt that. They're probably just there for the money and the power, and only men allowed. So it's just going to be either one, as Ronald Reagan said, a bunch of men sleeping with each other to gain favors and whatnot, and a 2-week excursion away from their wives and whatnot. That'll be A. Or B, it could just be people collaborating, money and power, kissing each other's butts, doing some religious weird stuff, maybe some sacrifices here and there. But at the end of the day, what do I think it is? I would say there's probably some recreational activities, men sleeping with each other to gain favors in the business world. Obviously, I would say there's some sort of religious element, and probably the no women might be a good example, a good reason to not let your wife come and see that you're sleeping with other men. That's very real. So what is Bohemian Grove? Probably just a bunch of men sleeping with each other, doing some crazy effigies burning and religious offerings to either sell their soul to Satan or in hopes of that, and since they're just already all have money and power, they just get more money and power. With that being said, most likely I'll do another video in the future on this topic, but this was a very brief covering of the topic. With that being said, stay safe and stay hydrated.